Trenuj w sprzęcie dla najlepszych. Wejdź na groundgame.com.
Znajdujemy się w gościnnych progach restauracji Baczewskiej. Wraz ze mną są szefowie International MMA Federation. Hello, so what are you doing here in Poland?
My name's Kerith Brown. I'm the president of the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation. I'm here for several meetings to one, meet with the WADA president, Mr. Banka, and to discuss about the potential of being part of the European Games in 2023 as a demonstration for MMA. So there's lots of discussions and also working with the anti-doping agency to see how we can really work in terms of meeting those requirements in 2023. So far it's gone really well, and as I said, we want to establish our relationships with WADA as recently that we became a signature to the code in December. So we were, after 6 years of working towards that, we've been successful, and now we're building the relationship to ensure that we continue to demonstrate that we're at a world-class level, and want to ensure that we educate our athletes and coaches at the highest level for WADA.
You want to add something?
I think he covered most of the points. Yeah, I mean that's right. We wanted to meet with the senior leadership of WADA. It was a long process for us to become a signatory, which we gained in December, and obviously there are lots of requirements as a signatory and lots of compliance requirements. It's obviously going to be quite difficult for a relatively new organisation, and we're relatively small compared to other established international federations. But I think we've done well to get through that process, and we're developing all the time, and we also want to make sure that we can continue that growth, keep compliant with the code, and next year we're going to have the European Championships here in Poland, hopefully as a part of the European Games. But if not, we'll still have the championships in any case. So we had meetings with the Polish anti-doping agency to find out what services they could provide for us in terms of testing and education. And obviously prices as well for their services, so that's always important. So yeah, it was a good meeting. We also met with the Olympic Committee, the Polish Olympic Committee this morning as well. So that was really interesting, because the next stage for us now is to become a recognised sport within the Olympic family. So we're trying to make connections now with various members of the IOC that can help us to achieve that.
So I want to ask, how was this talking? But you both said it was well, yeah?
Yeah, it went well, because obviously, we want the full support of the National Federation to establish itself as the position of, looking after the sport within Poland. It's important for our National Federation to get that recognition. So having those meetings with the National Olympic Committee of Poland is key in terms of the development, and it's important for Poland to establish itself, because that regulates the sport from an amateur perspective, and then eventually, moving on to professional. Do you know what I mean? So ultimately, it's very unusual for the sport to be born upside down. We're working from a top-down situation, and now we're at the grassroots of where the national federations are, and we obviously making those recommendations, which is key. So working with Martin, who's the representative as the president of Poland, it's a key aspect to build those relationships with these key stakeholders, such as the National Olympic Committee and Sports Minister, to ensure that we meet all the requirements. As it still stands, that we are not recognised as an international federation through the process of GACIF. So we're still pushing for that, and it's important that we have our national federations meeting the highest standard in order to give us more sort of ammunition when we make our application and when it gets reviewed.
So the next step is to push MMA to Olympic Games?
Of course, I mean, that's a great vision to potentially have the sport, potentially in 28, which could be a demonstration sport. But I think the key thing is not too much to focus on the Olympic Games. I think it's establishing the sport. We're still not recognised as a sport, and I think that's an important part of our process, that we push for that recognition. It's a nice to have. If the Olympics were to say you're in tomorrow, we're ready. But at the same time, we have to establish ourselves that there's a process, and there are other sports that are pushing for that recognition, that have been there for a long time, and it will be what it is. And if we are given that opportunity and we're lucky enough, then of course it will be a great feeling to achieve such an achievement, to be involved in the Olympic Games in such a short space of time.
Yeah, I'm asking it because there's a lot of new games on Olympics, so maybe MMA is next.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we see other sports. Breakdancing came in, karate has been in as a demonstration sport, skateboarding, speed climbing. So there are a lot of new sports, but you have to watch, in terms of what the next generation want, and you have to follow that process. And MMA still, has a massive development with youth, and that's the thing that we have to prepare, that we are ready to safeguard the next generation. So having that as a new sport and ensuring that we get our fair share in terms of being able to engage is important. But for sure, if we can get in as part of as a demonstration in 2028, that would be a fantastic story, not only just for the sport, for myself and Denzine, who competed in '84 at the Los Angeles. So what a tremendous circle to kind of come round and come back from the sport of judo and then represent it in mixed martial arts. Phenomenal story.
Yes, so you had also this meeting with the chief of WADA. So I want to ask about doping in MMA. It's, I think, a very important thing. So what about young athletes who starting MMA and they already want to try? They heard you have to take something to be on the top. So how you want to fight with this?
So again, the conversations with Sebastian Gillett, who's the representative, the European representative, is key. And in terms of ensuring that the education is around the athlete is important. But it's not just about the athletes; it's about the coaches as well, because they're the first line of defence, is ensuring that the education is paramount in terms of clean sport within MMA, and we can clearly demonstrate that we've been involved in processing and having our anti-doping program as far back as 2015. So it's important. But I'm going to hand you over to the specialist, to be fair, which is Denzine. He's the specialist, to be fair, on the anti-doping program and ensuring that we meet the requirements from the grassroots.
Yeah, well, I'm still learning. I'm not a specialist. I know a little bit, but I think with the kids, when they're young, you have to teach them discipline, and you have to teach them about sportsmanship and fair play, and once they understand that, then they're less likely to try and do things which are outside of the rules. And basically taking drugs, they have to understand taking drugs is cheating. That's basically what you're doing, is you're cheating. So, you can't be proud of yourself. You're proud of your achievements, and your family and your friends can't be proud of you if you cheated to achieve what you did. So, I think those are the kind of moral values. We have to get the right values into the kids, and I think that's what MMA has the possibility to do, and that's what we're trying to do with the young people.
So next year in Poland on this tournament will be anti-doping tests on this?
Yeah, as I said, as far back as 2015, we've always implemented anti-doping in all of our events. We just recently had the World Championships in Abu Dhabi with over 480 athletes, with over 52 national federations competing, and we're pleased to say that out of 34 tests, there were no positive results. That's quite incredible when you look at how short the sport has been in the development. To be able to make that statement, I'm very proud that we champion that in terms of the education. So that shows that something's working in terms of the messaging is key, that is getting through to the next generation, and that we have to continue that and to maintain that level of that gold standard to ensure that from the athletes, the coaches, from the federation and the presidents, that they're all engaged at every level.
Okay, so you have any other plans here in Poland, or today is finished?
No real further plans apart from really having the conversations. We're now here to just further, bolster our position and our collaboration to ensure that, come next year we're ready, because it's a major event and there's a lot of logistics that we need to do, and we need to start now in terms of that planning. Because obviously our event has a lot of protocols put in place to ensure that we meet the high standards. The European Championship is like our second main event, and is a high event in terms of the calendar for MMA. So we have to get it right. There'll be a lot of countries coming here, and we want to make sure that the experience of coming into Poland is just as equally as making sure that the anti-doping is in place as well. So we're excited, we're looking forward to it, and we're pretty sure it's going to be a great experience for the Polish people in whether it's Warsaw or Krakow. Then we're yet to find out.
Okay, so we are waiting for next year.
Yes,
For sure,
excited about
we're excited about it. It's for us, it's going to be an amazing event. Our Europeans have been quite successful, and we've got to ensure that there's a high standard in terms of when the athletes come and the actual presentation of the event meets the requirements.
Sorry, a little disturbing. Can you please ask a gentleman, if we could talk about it. What about the Ukrainian war and Russian fighters? Are you open to have those fighters in your organization? Will they fight or not?
Yeah, the situation is not good. We all know the situation, for the Ukraine people has been sad. And, obviously the reflection is where the sanctioning is now, where we are with the Russian situation, and also with Belarus. We were one of the first in the pack to make an announcement that we'd suspend Russia and Belarus. It's unfortunate that sport and politics now meet. We've always fought to keep sport out of politics, but we have to show that our concerns are in the right areas, and we've met as a board. We all agreed in the right approach to suspend for the time being, but we're hoping that over time, when there's a ceasefire, that we want to get these athletes back, not only just the Ukraine athletes that we support wholeheartedly, that we will try and do everything that we can to accommodate them, whether that's free in terms of coming into a competition, but also from a Russia perspective, we've got to try and broker that. It's about peace, and we have to demonstrate that as a federation. We're a young federation, and we have to engage at every level. So, we can't be afraid to talk about the situation. We have to embrace and make sure that we are doing our bit in order to promote peace. And when Russia do come back and Belarus come back, then we're able to, whether it's on a neutral flag and we play a different national anthem to represent them, we'll be ready. We're confident that we can accommodate and make sure that there is peace, especially around in sport.
Okay, so one more thing. Sorry, I just can let you go, gentlemen, without a question about women MMA. It's not still as popular as the MMA that men are fighting. So the question is, do you have a specific plan to develop women MMA worldwide?
MMA has been at the beginning. I'll probably let Denzel have a little part of that in terms of responding. We've got a 134% increase in women's development within MMA, and the weight categories, and there's still a massive area of growth because the sport is still young, and so that we have the opportunity to upskill. But a key aspect of that is the coaching, and then being more accessible for females to be involved in the sport. And we're seeing that uptake from a youth development perspective. We've only had 2 youth world championships. So really, when you look at the sport of, say, boxing and judo and karate and wrestling, they've had over 100 years to develop. We've only had 7 years. that's nothing in the comparison how quickly that we're moving. But we're very proud the diversity of women being involved in the sport, not just only from a competition element, but also on a board level. We have 3 females that are already on the board, and it's already into our statutes. So we're proud of what we're currently achieving to date.
Yeah, I mean, as Kerry said, we're growing as a sport. We're only 10 years old, and we think that there has been a growth in female participation in our events. So of course we'd like to see parity. We'd like to see as many women's categories as there are for men's categories, but the numbers aren't there to justify adding new categories yet. What we need to do is start filling the categories we already have and making sure they're 100% populated, and before we start adding new weight categories. So that's a job that we have to do, and I think the development is going well. As Kerry says, it's not just about the participation in the competitions, it's how the women are participating at other levels in coaching, refereeing. We've got women's referees, we've got women judges, and we've got women on the board as well. We changed our statutes, which means that according to our statutes now, going forward, we must have at least 30% women on the board, which I think is great, and maybe we should go further. Maybe in one day it will be 50-50. And the other thing we've done is we've formed a women's commission. IMMAF has a women's commission. They're doing great work, and as a result of their work, I think 9 other federations have also formed their own women's commission, and that's something we'd like to see expand further across more federations. It will be their job to come up with ideas, innovative ways to try and attract more girls into the sport. But I think that the sport is attractive to women now. I think we've had Ronda Rousey as has kind of been a trailblazer for the women to come in, and I think there are other women now that are doing really well at the top end. They're getting the same media attention as the men are getting, and I think probably getting the same money, or they're doing well financially as well. So I think those are the kind of things I would say are the reasons why I'm optimistic that the women's game will catch up with the men's game. We're no different to other sports. Other sports have been the same. We're from judo. We saw the same thing with women's judo. It took a long time for it to get parity with the men's game. It took maybe 20 years. And maybe, we'll be looking at, hopefully we can do it in half that time. We can get the parity within 10 years. But we're working on that, because that's where, we want our sport to be inclusive. And we want equality in the sport, and we want to see the sport grow, and that's where we see that there's potential for huge growth.
What I would add to that is that some of the best fights on an amateur have been females. I'm going to put that straight out there, that there's been some great matches only recently in the World Championships, and also we had the new version of the IMMAF Super Cup Team Championships, where it's a mixed team of male and female, and there were some fantastic matches that kind of were thrown up through that tournament. So women are doing a great job in the sport of mixed martial arts, and from an amateur perspective, it's in good hands, and the growth is looking really well.
Okay. So I think it's all. So thank you very much.
Your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Super.
So thank you very much for your time, and good luck next year.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
we're looking forward to coming back and making an exciting event and opening it up to both male and female.
So we are waiting. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.